And we're live. 12 seconds in. You know, everyone talks about the weather, but only FEMA can do something about it. But not really. People go on and on about conspiracy theaters and theories about chemtrails and geoengineering and my observation of geoengineering, and I've kind of been around it a little bit at Lawrence Livermore and a few other labs, and that technology can affect, certain specific areas, put on in a big way. And basically, I keep saying this, I've been saying it for years, that humanity, when it comes to nature, is like salt on a potato chip. Somewhat tasty and interesting, but not really a big deal, right? Not really, the total package. And because weather has more to do with the sun and space and where we see chemicals, right? Those aren't just aerosols, and pretty much jet plane exhaust is an aerosol. The hydrocarbons, etc., act as an aerosol, but it's not really the kind of chemtrails that when people talk about barium and aluminum and all of that, that has to go, 50 to 80,000 feet up in the air to really have an effect. And anything that's 50 to 80,000 feet up in the air, you couldn't see if they were doing it. It's too high up. The stuff that we see, that when they turned the sky into a checkerboard a pattern, it's really, you know, in the 5 to 10,000 foot range, right? And what they're doing, God knows, but I mean, because the way those patterns are, no commercial airlines ride on radio beams, meaning they follow a path, and at night you can see it really clear, because they have their lights on, blinking away, and one plane will go by, and then about 5 minutes later, one right behind it goes, and then you can see that they're like on railroad tracks up in the sky. And but when you look at or the trails up there, they're like all over the place. What the heck are they doing? Who knows? But whatever they're doing up there, that doesn't last that long. So it's not affecting the weather per se, right? Now, I keep telling you family that my major scholarly thing is to look at patterns, on every level: emotional patterns, psychic patterns, economic patterns, physical patterns, historical patterns, geological patterns, and when you look at them in the long term, how they kind of go together, that's when you can get a larger picture of what's going on. And when I was in the scholarly world, that's what I got paid for. And different people would want me to look at different patterns, right? And instead of looking at it in a scholastic way, I was given the breath to look at it anyway and try to see what was really going on. As they say, connect the dots. Where scholars don't do that. If it's not in the textbook, they don't want to know about it because they're only interested in their paycheck and being tenured and publishing. And all that is, you only can do any of that is if you follow the path that's prescribed. Anyway, so whereas my path was, go ahead, Al, figure this out. What do you think? Here's all this stuff, and when we show it to the scholarly boys, they gave us the same, boring, same old, scholarly answer. Well, I would give people really interesting answer. So I'm looking at, you know, I started the series, 40 Days, 40 Nights, Not only do I look at patterns, I see things as metaphors. So I use that because all of the great, Moses, Noah, Jesus, you name it, whoever was like doing anything, Buddha, Vishnu, they all had their 40 day and 40 night little moments, Muhammad, praise be the prophet, right? So we are in one of these points as I started to realize that a great deal of these trends were all coming together in their hiatus. And some of these trends were like billions of years long, other, you know, uh, hundreds of years, some 10 years, but they were all coming together. And they were all trends on different physical, social, emotional, economic kind of things. And it's like, hmm. And then Donnie got elected, and that was big because, you know, the only way Donnie got in there is that somebody put him in there. Somebody put him in there to be a big distraction to what's going down. And weather wise, if you go to this guy who does a site called Oppenheimer Ranch, his name is Diamond, and there are about 5 or 6 other weather sites on YouTube that are as good. This guy is he's been doing it forever, and he is a geological weather guy. I mean, he looks at, like me, at trends that go back millennia, millions of years. So he basically, Earth pretty much has never been always like how we know it. It's really only been this way for the last 10,000 years or so, which in geologic time is nothing. Earth has mostly been a snowball. And humanity, Homo sapien was kind of, as a pre hominum anyway, and all its other derivations, we're Eskimos. And if you go see the movie Alpha, about how dogs became part of our tribe, it gives you a good idea of what Earth was for most of its time. So that's what we're looking at. I mean, are presently in an ice age. It's just the very beginning of it. And we are in a solar minimum. You either have solar maximum, that's when things are really toasty, or solar minimum when they get cold. And then in the sun, it has these electromagnetic fluxes that keep the sun contained instead of going, into a red dwarf or supernova. And both are not good for the solar system. So, but if you've ever put magnets together and you can't, you have to push them together, and then when you put north to south, they're like attracted. That's the sun all the time. There's this big conflict, and those magnetic fluxes are all over the place. And every now and then, you get sunspots, and that's when tremendous amount of certain particles, come shooting out. And if that hole is like in our direction, it shoots this tremendous amount of like UV or X-ray or a zillion other particles that have effect on our weather. Why it's cold or it's rainy or it's hurricanes or tornadoes or any of those things. And they are relatively, if you study this stuff, come in patterns that they've looked at it long enough that they know every 11 years this is going to happen, every 30 years this is going to, every 1,000 years this is going to. So they got it down pretty good because they can check with what history of the last 3,000 years and people have been looking at the stars and the sun for a long time. Pretty much every empire that was anything. The Egyptians, the Mesopotamians, the Babylon, the Inca, the Maya, all of those guys were really right on top of the math of astronomy. And basically, astrology is a derivation of the science of astronomy, or vice versa. And so, people who study this stuff know what's going on. So, we're heading towards an ice age that is going to be this winter, last winter was the coldest winter on recorded history, and it's coming again. And we've had many ice ages before, like, you know, uh, Valley Forge. That was like a pretty cold winter, so cold that, uh, you know, George Washington was able to ride his horse and bring his army across the Hudson and not have to worry about the English attacking them through the water. And they brought their big cannons down to the southern end of Manhattan, and they called it the Battery. A battery of, of big guns. Anyway, so that was a mini ice age. The Thames during the Henry VIII period froze for 2 years, solid. Even in the summertime, it snowed in London during that period. That's a historical. You can go check it up, look it up. So we've had a number of mini ice ages. So um, we are heading for one, and our food production is balanced on a global distribution network, and it's just on time. I mean, everything just, you're running out of stuff in the supermarket. There's no warehouse in the back. It's a truck that shows up and puts stuff from the truck right on the shelves. And that maximizes profit. But if there's a hiccup or a monkey wrench in the distribution chain, that's when you get oops, you know. And that's kind of what the oil embargo of the early 70s was a disruption of the delivery chain of oil, and look what happened there, and then it went across the line. And all during the Cold War, Russia was our ally. It was a little play we were playing, so certain groups could have power and money and da 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 da. And Russia had a really bad winter, and they were not going to have. They had no wheat, and they had no um, grains to feed their animals. So they're going to run out of food the next winter, and that would have, totally, you know, screwed things up really big, and might have even caused the Third World War. So what did Nixon do? But he gave all the grains and wheat that Russia needed, so that disruption in their food chain, in their limited food chain, so the Russians wouldn't starve. So we didn't have Third World War, but it caused bread to rise in price from 9 cents a loaf for Wonder Bread to 80 cents, and from 30 cents for good whole bread to $1.20, and the prices never went down. Even though now we produce more grains and stuff, but once the bread price went to that, the companies when their base cost went super down low, they weren't going to lower the price. They were making some serious profit there. So anyway, we are running into a time when this is going to happen. And as many of these folks who specialize in their little niche say, well, it's not a matter whether this is going to happen. It's like when it's going to happen. And they've been saying that now for the last 15 years, but we've been creeping towards this. It's like the economic collapse. It's like, oh, we can't tell you what's going to happen, but it's going to happen. Because how long will the rest of the world give America goods, services, and commodities for just a piece of paper called a treasury note? I don't know. With what Donnie's doing is causing moments of disruption. So these chains are, you know, uh, So all of these things are coming together. When is this going to happen? Your Sensei Al Bob here can't tell you, but that's why I started this little um, series of 40 days and 40 nights, and we're in today, 22. We're past the point of no return, and that's why I keep telling you. Really, the only thing that can change this is a shamanic, um, alchemical, and that's why I'm trying to bring the family into this vision. That's why I keep asking you to meditate and pray, because the things that will deal with this will only come when humanity ascends in their spiritual sense. Right now, we are in the lower two chakras, and you know, we're in the Aquarian age, but we're still acting like we're the Piscean age. Piscean age, getting what you want through violence and threat and power. Um, Aquarian age, um, surviving through understanding. Seeing stocked up on stars during the winter at has reduced price because unable to transport north. This is true. Yep. This is our little transport trains, and so I mean, this worked pretty good for the last, I don't know, 20 or so years, or 30 years of our continued, dependence on globalization and, on time distribution of commodities. And, so Donnie is taking a hatchet to all that, and that's probably good because if he disrupts things in a time when we still have stuff, millions won't die. But if this, snowball really starts rolling down the hill, we're looking at losing in a 2-year period 200 million people just in America from starvation. I mean, no one, when I was a kid, we had a garden. You know, I live out in an extremely rural area, and even the people out there don't grow. I grow gardens, I can, walk around. I pick things out of the woods, There appear, there are loads of berries all over my little neck of the woods. No one picks them. I mean, the bears eat them, the animals eat them, and or they, there's when berries pop out, you need to pick them like within 3 days, or they start, to go south. So we're in a very strange time. I see everyone spending so much time on their screens and they're playing video games. Being the only time I use the screen is to talk to you guys and to do a little research to think about what I want to talk about. So the other thing I want to talk about is we really have to step up to the realization of who we really are. And that's an individual. I can't tell you who you are. You are the only person. But so many of the folk out there are so glued to what the powers that should be tell them what they should be. You know right now there are states who want children to go to school starting at 2. They want to grab a hold of children. I mean, the Nazis said, if you want to win a war, start the propaganda at 2 years old, and we will turn that child into a killing machine for the state, right? And that's kind of what they want. That's the zombie apocalypse you're talking about. You want to see The Walking Dead? Go to Walmart's. I was there Friday. I took the wrong turn and I ended up in a stream of traffic where the only way I could get out was to, go through Walmart's. So I parked. I drove to. I said, oh, well, I'll just kind of go in, and the universe was watching out for me. There was a parking. The whole parking lot was full, right? And I just kind of drove around up one thing and turned into another, and some guy was leaving right by the front door. So I pulled in there, parked. I kind of hobbled in, and some guy was just about to return the motorized shopping cart. And I said, hey, can I take that? Oh, yeah, please do. I'd have to crawl back. So I got that and was all charged up, and I went around, and it was The Walking Dead. It was like unfriggin' believable. Now, I didn't, get anything because the lines were ridiculous. So I just kind of drove around and watched people killing each other for a pair of, nylons or something. It was, please, this can't be who you are. So that's the kind of subject I want to talk about this evening is who are we? And what do we need to do to save the species? And let's go do it. It's got to be a lot more fun than, playing video games, you know. So, oh, and it's 20 minutes. I don't like to spend 20 minutes on that. 20 minutes and 22 seconds. So, anyone have an idea? Oh, I got it up. Okay. Anyway, I mean, things look very dire right now. But my study of trends of the last million years shows, and this isn't just my theory, that with every great jump of humanity's ascension into their higher self, first had to come with a challenge. But the difference between actually making it and being screwed up is when you prepare, understand what your challenge is, and you go at it in a instead of a scared way or a threatened way. You go at it, as Louise Etcher always said, Al, you should have on your business card, when things get weird, the weird get professional. And that's what it takes. So I've always been able to rise to the occasion, no matter what I worked on. And I've told you loads of stories of working on political action groups like, Ralph Nader's NIPERG and the Stop Shorm campaign and the No Nukes and housing projects in Manhattan in the 80s for the homeless. And where mommy and the kids used to live in a, rent-controlled apartment, but then they lost it and they had to live in a cardboard box, and that's kind of what happened in San Francisco. I lived there, and in the little SRO I lived in, back in 1970 something, with my first wife, Donna Ann, a friend of mine, years and years later, what is that, 50 years or 40 years ago, I have a friend, and he talks to me all the time, and he's got a daughter who works for Sony, has a six-figure salary, and she is living in the same building that I'm in, and it's still the same. They didn't like rip it all down and build fancy things. No, she's living in the SRO, probably the exact same one, but they were all kind of the same. The single room occupancies of this building that had been an apartment building. They just kind of sliced it up and put junkies in there. And now she is living in that building, and it's costing her $3,000 a month to live in a room. And some of the junkies are still there. The guys are vomiting in the lobby, and that's San Francisco. People defecating on the street. I mean, California. The bottom line about California is the powers that shouldn't be want to depopulate California and push them all into where the Japanese were pushed, into concentration camps. But they're going to call them smart cities. And it's going to be straight out of Steven Spielberg's little movie about the near future, where everyone's living in stacked mobile homes in a ghetto, and it's called a smart city. On the sign it says, Blue Hill Drive's a smart city, and it's like, no. And everyone's, because they have no life, they got nothing to look forward to. They all escape into drugs, alcohol, violence, and, virtual reality. I mean, take a look at that film. It's probably, I don't know, 6 months to a year old. So, and all of Spielberg's movies like that, he definitely gets a heads up. He's like the, who's the guy who wrote Wells? not Wells. Who's the guy who wrote 1984? He is like that guy for the 21st century. Instead of writing a book, he's making movies, right? Because was it Wells? Anyway, it escapes me at this moment. But whoever that was, Orson Welles. Orson Welles? Not H.G. Whoever wrote 1984. Ready Player One. Yep, that was what's his name's movie, and the guy who wrote George Orwell. Thank you very much. You are great adepts. So Orwell wrote that book, not saying, "Oh, better watch out. This is what's going to happen." No, he came from an elitist family of the powers that shouldn't be. And he wrote that book as a heads up to the population. Kids, get ready. This is what you're going to be living in, and that's where we're at. When we're living in a smart house, where our refrigerator, our stove, our dishwasher, our the big screen TV is always on, looking at you, even when you unplug it. Every outlet is listening to what you had to say. I mean, that's where we are at already. We're there, and when 5G comes, they'll have our brains wired. They'll be able to see what we're thinking. Now, this is all coming down the pike relatively quickly. And we're going to be bought off by the access. It's so convenient. And we're taking care of everything for you. But I like living in the deep woods. And so do a lot of people. And they don't want you to live there. So they're going to be barbecuing every community. Now, I live in a place where there's nobody, except me and a handful of folk. So they're not going to be bothering me till the very end, when they nuke that part of the state. But until then, it's too expensive to come bother me. But pretty much everybody else, and we're seeing how they're gonna do it. Has anyone seen the films of the Campfire Fire? That's a really interesting name. But anyway, basically, none of the trees have burned. The grass is still green, but the houses are incinerated. It's so hot, it melted the appliances. I should be a fireman, in a large fire that was, as we would say, I forgot the term. But anyway, totally burned. Half the building would still be there. The fireplace would still be there. The appliances would still be there, even if, there was a fire around them, because it takes, close to, 5,000 degrees and or hotter to melt steel. And whereas, wood burns at about, 1,100 degrees. But I don't know if any of you have experienced building a house, but they use this stuff called OSB, right? And what it is basically sawdust glued together. So all that stuff that's, you think is plywood. No, it's held together with very volatile, glues. So you get that stuff just going, and boy, it goes like gasoline. So I can see how these fires of these new row upon row upon row houses, but the fact that I can't find any images of appliances, metal, like the washer and the dryer and the stove, they're not even there. And their cars are like, and the trees aren't burnt. I mean, that's, so that's either a space-based energy weapon but OSB is something really terrible in itself, because it is sucking the rainforests of Brazil down. When I was there, and, at Búzios in '88, they had sucked down a quarter of the rainforests, And what it's like, when I went there with the Nazis, they had just obliterated everything, burned it to the ground, and it looked like hell. It's just, it burnt and burnt and burnt. And then they put palm oil plants, right? Anyway, so all of the wood that they cut down before they set the place on fire was taken out by the Japanese, and they had factories on the great rivers and out in the ocean making this stuff. So it's so polluted the ocean, it was unbelievable. Now with Fukushima, it looked like it's the way. So I worked in the nuclear industry, right? I know how I have experience wiring facilities, and the way all of those plants blew up, and they had enough time. The earthquake, they could have scrammed those reactors and shut them down. Reactor 4 was offline for the thing, and it survived the the earthquake and the tsunami very nicely. Whereas the other ones, they didn't turn off; they just let them cook. And then when they lost power and they couldn't put water through the core, they melted down and went critical, blew up because the billion-gallon of water that was still in the vessel turned to hydrogen and oxygen, and it blew the building up. And then the cores melted down and went into the water table below. And now virtually all of the sea creatures in California are dead. You go along the coast where it was just thriving with sea anemones, etc. Let's see. Looks like fires cleared the way for Frisco to LA superhighway. That's right. There's going to be that fast train, and they're just going to build these smart cities and push everyone that were in the rural suburban areas into these basically concentration camps. Well, not so much. It already exists in these communities. We're already, if you have Alexis, what time is it? That little girl is listening to you 24/7. Yes. The only way those buildings came down is they went at the speed of they were free fall. Only, it's like you try to nail a nail in with a hammer. You hit it, it doesn't go all the way in the wood. You got to hit it, hit it, hit it, hit it before it's in the nailed in. And the same thing would be those floors. Just one floor hitting that floor doesn't make the whole thing fall at a free fall, meaning the stuff underneath the floor that falls has to already be evaporated for the building to fall the way it did and to turn it into dust. I mean, these things are happening right in front of our eyes. It's been 18 years since then. It's like, so the only way we can handle this is really with community, and everyone is disconnected from their communities. Tide pools are dead. That's what and that came from Fukushima. Good. So, and that's only one of my 26 novels. And, I got about 80 short stories and about 200 essays, which are written like essays, not, James Joyce on acid. So, I have all of this stuff. I have all this experience. You guys have similar stuff. Together, we could truly make a unbelievable force. Every one of you must know at least one or two other people in your community that's part of your cadre that is as interesting as we are. And you put that together in a committed way, it's unstoppable, right? And I've been involved in a lot of things, and it's amazing how the average person is truly amazing, All they need is a little nudge, And we are the little pebble in the pond, It is up to us, right? And I'm just going to keep talking like this, twice a day until I can't do it anymore, to motivate you guys. And again, you need to take all of my little things off of and put them in a safe storage and share them with others, and get people to. I don't know. I can't even figure out how to share anymore, So Anyway, so we're still going to have a summer. Spring will still be there, and they will be hotter and more intense, and the winters will be more and more. And then over a 3 to 10 year period, these things are going to blur together. Certain things had to happen. I mean, what happened to Henry VIII? Yes, they had one of these solar minimums, but because of the energetics of the sun, it caused earthquakes, and it caused a really big volcano to blow off, I think in Krakatoa, and it spread, the sulfuric acid, and basically it gave a nuclear winter. Why, the Thames froze for 2 years is that there was no sunlight, and to try and these morons to go on about how we have to try, get that termites create more CO2 than all of human activity. Cars, trucks, industry, cows, you name it. Whatever we do can't match the CO2 produced by termites. That's a scientific. You can go Google that one and take it to the bank. So whenever anyone, we got to give ourselves, blah, blah, blah. No, it's a scam to make money. And basically, all we need is more trees, it'll make more oxygen. No, 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 no. It's not that. This is a control mechanism to force us to be pressed into, accept catastrophes that are going to wipe out 3/4 of the human race. If you're in Georgia, go find the Georgia Stones. They're over near Atlanta. Or go read Agenda 21. It's on the internet, or Agenda 30. This is the plans. This is what they're actively going for, and that's why Donald Trump is there, because he is the distraction from all of this stuff. I mean, if people weren't having to read his tweets 5 times a day, and didn't think, and the EPA didn't do anything anyway. It just gave the comfort of trying to protect our environment. Now I'm saying that all the shit that industry does isn't good. All the pollution that does is bad. It poisons us, but it's not having any real effect on our weather, other than, like right now, the fires that were near LA, it burned a laboratory that had 50 years of rocket fuel and radioactive materials that were stored there, burnt. And it is like, you go look at the satellite pictures of the smoke plume, and it totally, anyone in Texas, I'm sorry to tell you, your chances of getting cancer went from 1 in 100,000 to 1 in 29. People who live along the coast from Wilmington, North Carolina up to Maine, their chance of dying of cancer went from 1 in 100,000 to 1 in 50. And there was this great YouTube of this guy who went over, was a nuclear physicist, and he was, went on a tour of Fukushima, was looking at it. They're trying to keep the cores cool, even though they can't find them, but they're dumping millions of gallons, and they're pumping it out extremely highly radioactive with every kind of isotope that will last, a good 1,000 years, so they can't just dump it anywhere. You should see the pictures of these tanks. They have 500,000 tanks, each with 100,000 gallons of highly radioactive water, and they're stacked on top of each other in the space of 6 soccer fields, and they're running out. They can't, right? So now they got these tanks from the contractor, the cheapest contractor, and they're already kind of dissolving. The water is leaking out, and 1.5 million gallons leaks out of these tanks and goes into the ocean. And it's like, I wouldn't eat any fish that came anywhere, because they're finding high. And see, the thing about isotopes from a reactor, it's like a fingerprint. it creates certain isotopes at certain decay rates and other things of that nature. So you can tell, like the smoke from Chernobyl and things of that nature. You could tell exactly where it went, and you couldn't. Oh no, that didn't come from there. So the Fukushima radiation is being found everywhere in Europe, in the milk in Germany, you name it, it's being found everywhere. And it looks as if somebody in the powers that shouldn't be basically didn't make the earthquake or the tsunami. They could have, but that's still out. But whoever meaning all they had to do was put the backup generators on the roof. And they did it for the reactor 4, but they didn't do it for the others. They stuck it in the parking lot. And the you know, tidal wave came washing through and washed out those generators, and that backup power, bingo. Those three reactors blew up. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff if you do the research on it that shows that somebody, and Chernobyl looks like that's what happened. Somebody did it on purpose in 3 Mile and right. Oh, poet Bard. I think is the title. I mean, poetry is. I like poetry, but Bard's a little more story. It's the griot in me. Okay. Why doesn't someone put my name up for it? Meaning, I'm barely, I'm homeless. It's hard for me to do paperwork. Someone put that in and tell them to go look at, my blog spot and my YouTube and get a hold of me at my Gmail. I mean, that's, I do everything on this little phone. And as long as I have these purple glasses, I can read what's on the screen. Well, man, I got a lot of thoughts on that one. So, and what's amazing about all of this is none of this. We're right now at a really, really amazing position of there's more I'm more positively looking at this than negatively. I'm not like, oh, doom and gloom, we're all gonna die, life sucks, and then we die. No, no. This is something to be challenged by, to step up to like, let's do it, gang. Like Andy Rooney in those movies. Let's do a play in the barn. I'm up for it. You know. So anyone want to come and grab me and take me to the United Nations? I'd much rather. You know what we all should do? We should all go to Puerto Rico because it's in America and it's down near, where it's going to be warm. And those people need some help. And we could get our chops together doing that. And there's money down there to help people. We can write grants. We can start, I want to start this, Humanities Artist Trust International, because it would be the umbrella that could fund us all and whatever we want to do, and every other person, and do this in a collaborative effort with love, and bring it through. Let the United Nations fund it. Let all of the powers that shouldn't be. Let this be their opportunity to get on the right track. You can't fight these guys, but we can help them do the right thing and have a good time, make some money, and not starve to death or freeze to death. These are the things I'm looking for, not to starve to death or freeze to death. Now, I'm doing pretty good with nothing, so I might do pretty even better with a little something. So, I want you guys to put on your thinking caps and see who has the time. Yes, if you have a family, if you have kids, you got a mortgage, I can understand. Been there, done that. So I understand. But there are a lot, I'm sure a bunch of you guys and gals there aren't really stuck where you are. And you are kind of on the diving board of diving into a new adventure or your first adventure. But, you know, it's time not to be scared. It's time not to be. I've been a slug for the last 15 years, basically. 10 years just being Mr. Hedonist, and then 5 years being Mr. Dead Guy. I'm not dead anymore. So that was my subject for the evening. And I'm glad you guys are reading my blog spot, XRATTED blogspot. So there were 6 different cuts, right? And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And they are all separate, but they all are connected, right? You can see how it's a novel. And as people have been reading them, they get resituated in the line. So you might jump on and find the last as the first and the first as the last. And the beauty of those slices, you can read them any way you want, right? Because they're like self-contained, even though they're connected. So the first one is the story of me dying on top of the mountain and kind of feeling, oh, and then taking it back to when I really got sick in 2012, where I was at that rainbow gathering. And I described what a rainbow gathering is kind of like in a real personal kind of way. And then the next one is I kind of take it to a more interesting, as you said, poetic ways, where, I'm talking about a trip I took with my friend. We were both, young Turk artists in New York, and now here we were, freaking old guys, teachers, and we were invited to a show, and he didn't have a way to go, so we were taking my Datsun B210, and we ran up there in a snowstorm, and we were kind of powered on, some tie stick and car exhaust from my car, because it was kind of, it's winter, it was snowing. We were going up 81, and we kept getting turned around because we were losing our consciousness. Anyway, it's called, the story of going to the world's biggest truck stop. And I basically took the story of Dante's Inferno and wrote my story based on that. And that's what every great writer does. He takes a great piece of literature and then rewrites it in their own way. So, and I really, really stick to every, because Dante went through these different levels, which he was brilliant at explaining theology. It's your birthday. And yep. And the other one was my little story about Ray, right? And it was like, it was that summer of 2012 when I went to that rainbow gathering. And that 2012 was a very interesting year because things changed, but nobody noticed it. They were all expecting the end of the world, and it didn't come. So I'll say no big deal, but everything changed. The weather changed, the sun changed, everything changed. And we were in Tennessee, like 70 miles from from the big deep green where I live, where I have my big green spot. And it was in the Daniel Boone National Forest, and it was right in the middle of a rainforest where the TVA had one of their big power lakes. Hadn't rained there for 2 months, and in all the years, 100 years of keeping records, by the TVA, it never stopped being a rainforest. The first summer it did, right? And these two great crones, friends of mine, who I describe when I'm describing, when I met them, the 2 girls, who were my sister. I mean, they're both transsexuals, but they were my sisters. And they also, were members of When Things Get Weird, the Weird Get Professional. So for over years of Rainbow Gatherings, both of them, we did amazing things together, right? So they came to me. So, I was really busted up, couldn't move around. So I was in that goat camp, healing everyone. That's what I do. So when people needed to be healed, these girls and the people from Com just brought them over to my little healing tent. Anyway, long story short, the girl said, the real crowds are going to show up in about 2 days, and we have no drinking water whatsoever. We need rain. So we went up to, they got me a wheelchair and two young lads who kind of dragged me up to this top, and we did a ceremony up there because there were loads of thunderstorms to the north of us, going through West Virginia and through the mountains of over there, but they just didn't come down here. So we did ceremony to bring them down, and that you can control the weather way better through ceremony than dumping chemicals in the air. So we did that, and it came down, and we saw the storm coming to us. I mean, it got blacker and blacker, but it was still, the sun was going down, and people were running around and, ooh, and playing drums, and we tried to walk. We came down this big hill, and we were telling people, hey, everybody, you better get into your tents. You better tie things down. There's going to be a real bad storm. But nobody listened to us. So we went to our little campsite and tied everything down. And the storm came in and it was like biblical proportions. I mean, it blew it was a tornado right through. And it was I can't pronounce it. It's a Spanish word. It means a tornado put on its side and the wind goes sideways, which is way worse than a tornado, because a tornado is like a specific little spot where it's like churning things up like a blender. This thing was like miles wide this way. So it was just chopping everything down. And it went through that corner of Tennessee into Virginia and wiped out everything going up 81. I mean, it killed hundreds of people. It wiped out half of AEP's electric service, really decimated the northern part of Roanoke. And we did it with prayer. And that's, it's dangerous to, if we got a little bit of knowledge, that can be pretty dangerous. So, but it rained there, and we had enough drinking water for 20,000 people for the gathering. I mean, it dumped 20 inches of rain on us in 8 hours. And luckily it did it from about, 6 in the afternoon till, you know, 6 in the morning. But anyway, um, it was bizarre. And that's when I knew, ooh, the shit. That's when I started looking at the longer trends. And I had time. I had 2 more years of working for the Desperate Lawyers, but I kind of already, I knew my legs were going. I knew something was wrong, but I just didn't go to the doctors. I didn't, I said, screw it, I'll die before the shit hits the fan here. And I really got the sense that shit was I was having really wild dreams. And anyway, and then I was seeing everyone de-evolving in front of my eyes. I mean, there were some, like these two sisters of mine. I mean, they were true blue, but the rest of that gathering was, everyone was, just couldn't see what was going on. I mean, it was, people were fist fighting. I've never seen gatherings like that. It was, and people were drunk, and there's never any alcohol in the gathering. And it was just a mess. And no one at council would even respond to, hey, who's the adult in this room, Oh, it's so beautiful, blah, 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 blah. And that's why, I mean, when the rainbow was cool, when people stood up, I mean, it was pretty amazing to build a city for 20,000 people in 2 weeks, So anyway, and that's what, so I met a whole bunch of people that referenced to the character in Ray. And it was like that story took place in like, I just finished reading the United Nations paper on what they thought 2030 was going to look like. And they were basically saying, half the world's population is going to die. And so that's the story I wrote, right? And so go read that one. It's called Ray. And first half is about the man of gold, right? And everything's a metaphor, and it takes it straight out of the Wizard of Oz. Because the Wizard of Oz
written by a guy who was an economist, and he was screaming on about what was going to happen with this, what was going on just before the Depression. So he wrote this children's book, so maybe somebody might get the story, and that's kind of what my three quarters of that first novel is like. A whole bunch of things about what's going on, what I think's going to happen, in a way that's, as my friend up there said, was poetry. So, and my editor friend said it was like James Joyce on acid. So, uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, let's see. It's my birthday. Yeah, sorry. It's my birthday. It's my birthday. Yep. Uh, then I wrote one about, when I was, yeah, it's my birthday. It was kind of, I was born here and almost, that was the first time I died when I was born. And if it wasn't for Dr. Teresa, I'd still be dead. And it just goes from there on, right? And it talks about me just before I was born. Yeah, I can remember getting my marching orders into this life. Basically, you're going to be a lucky bastard. I said, what's that? Well, you'll always have the best luck, and everything will work out for you. But it'll be one gigantic shitstorm all the way through. But it'll be a lot of fun. It'll be really interesting. Help a lot of people. It'll be great, and it's going to be one big gold star for your ascension. And I said, okay, sign me up. Because everyone else was bailing. Oh, I can't, it's so hard, I can't do that. Blah, blah, blah. And Bob told me, that's why Bob is in my name. Bob, who's God. When God or love wanted to reincarnate into a human and hang out with the humans as a human body, go hang out at a titty bar and have lap dances and drink vodka, his name was Bob. Everyone knew him as Bob. Hey, Bob, how you doing? So that's kind of where I picked that up. Sensei Al Bob. So there's that whole little conversation I had with Bob about what's going on from the biblical sense. Those born again Christians would burn me at a stake if they read that shit. And I touch everything: the economics. What is sex? Why are we here? That whole kind of story. And there's a few of you who seem to have read it. Has kind of picked up. Act Two. It's your birthday. Was hopefully expressed raw and real. Hey, can I use that on the book jacket? I think that's pretty cool. So, we really have a great opportunity here, gang, to really do something just that will go down in the annals. We will, what does a bard do but sing songs of the great bards before them? We can be the great bards before whoever comes after us. It's always great to have people sing songs of you. And it's always, so I was the dude in New York City. It's a hard pun to always say that I was really well connected as an electrician, but that's why I kept going back. I could always go back and jump right in. No matter how long, away, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, didn't matter. Just could jump right back in. And then I realized if I kept doing that, it was the same circle. And no matter how different it was or how I mixed it up. So I said to myself, okay, I'm going to do everything I could ever think of doing here, and then I'm going to move on, do something totally different. Do what I've been tasked to do. So I did everything I could basically do, and then I moved on. So from 1988, when I left, to 2011, I never went back. You know, period. Didn't go back. Didn't go visit. Didn't do anything. People came visit me. Why don't you come back to? I said, where I live is totally different. You'll love it. They would. They did. And then they went off and got their own little deep green. So anyway, I went back in 2011, and New York City always was the same, but constantly changed. But what was strange when I went back in 2009, everything changed but stayed the same, which is a lot stranger than the other way around. And I went into all the neighborhoods that I lived in. That when I lived there, they were great and cutting edge and really raw and just like the guy said about my writing. And the but now they were, totally yupped out. It was like latte bars and Jimmy Choo Shoe stores and Gucci and this in places in neighborhoods that they didn't know you. When I was there, they'd kill you. Lower East Side Avenue D was like, you better be known, right? So anyway, I'm walking down the street and people would like stick to, Al, Al's back. Really, it was like haven't been there since 2011. I haven't been there since '88, and people are screaming my name and running down and hugging me. Now that's when you're remembered. And people would, remember when we did this? Look what I did after you left. You're so, oh, I love you. I would have never done this without, that's being remembered. And this is what I'm offering you guys to pick up the garland, and take it on the road. We have this platform. We don't have to, like, it'd be fun to take it on the road, have a bus. I even actually have a flower-powered bus. In the big green spot, but we can do almost anything. I mean, I've read all of your energies of the 200 and whatever, 15 or so of us. Man, we could definitely spin this planet up. I mean, we're spinning it up just by doing this. So, as I look at everything. I have all these trend lines going on that I've been building for years. And, you come to my good old YouTube site, you see all the stuff I'm looking at. So it's kind of, we can do it on this platform. I mean, I'm an old dog learning new tricks. I'm, somewhat limited. Maybe if I had one or two of the cadre come and get me, take me someplace, and we could build a base of operation where we could, work out from and write grants and build things and not physical things, but organizational things. And this town would not be a bad place to do it. Not here at the school; it's too isolated. It's not mine, but there's this town is a town that is right on that edge of really being something amazing or just staying stuck in the mud. It has been really amazing at other times. It has all the potential. I know everyone, da 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 da. So if a few people want to come here, we rent a house. I'm sure I could find something. I've been trying to get, there are a lot of, abandoned buildings in this town. And I know everyone in the governments and nonprofit things. And I've been trying to get a couple of these houses and get homeless people in them and fix them up and trend them in a really positive way, which would make it into a good kind of base of operations. But we can go anywhere. I'm thinking Puerto Rico, really. It's warm, it's Caribbean, it's part of America, and those folks really, really need help. This place is, it's almost toast, but, I've tried to get all the organizations here to do something, and they all like support. Let me take you out to lunch, and you can tell me what you're thinking about now, and I can say a few words and sound like I'm being smart. The only person who's truly true blue is the people over the Salvation Army. Those people I really have great respect for. The lady who runs it, Captain Monica, just she's a street fighting girl, but she never gets pissed off. I go see her and she calls me up on the phone and I'm the person she can, or I don't know if she, but, I let her vent. But anyway, that would be a great, they would love to do anything, I could put my mind to, so. There's a lot of potential here, and we have time, the snowball isn't really, I mean, this winter's going to be cold, but, it's going to be, last winter was really cold, um, shit's happening, but shit has always been happening. Um, I would say the next big red flag is basically, the flying saucer is going to land on the White House. on, and we're going to go, oh my God, they're here, and then we're going to be let known that we've known they've always been here, and it's always been okay, and now we worked it out, and we have all this great technology. Look, no more gas, no more this here, and they'll do that because that's what happened before. Meaning, they had, Tesla technology was around, um, in the 1840s. Ben Franklin understood it, Mr. Newton knew about it, but the powers that shouldn't be wouldn't let it come out. But now they have to because, again, it's another point of rebranding. So, and Donnie brought out, are we going to have a space force? Well, we already do. It's called Solar Warden. All our money. Where did all those trillions of dollars go? Out there. So we're in really interesting times, and what all of this stuff that needs to coalesce it all together. And this is why the powers that shouldn't be would kind of say, okay, these guys, let's let them do their thing. And we give them as much money and support and leeway because that's what Soho was. Soho, they fought us tooth and nail until we proved to them, hey, we can be your golden calf. And they said, oh, wow, sure. And now look what Soho is. Look what the Lower East Side is. Look what Williamsburg, Brooklyn is. Look what where PS1 is. Look at all of these things which were just garbage, rotting, and we went in there and made it to gold. And there's more positive stuff about it than negative, right? So, I'm not scared, or I don't look at, even Satan, is I love the way the guys in South Park portray Satan. I'm a big reader of the Bible. So what's the first book or story in the Bible? But Job. Not like, and in the beginning. No, Job. Go read Job in the King James. And basically there's, God and the devil, and they're hanging out in a pool hall having a beer. And a guy's going, look at my boy Job. He's such a good and sock puppet, isn't he? And the devil says, yeah, look at all the shit you give him. He's got, I'd be kissing your ass if you gave me all that shit. Take some advice, see what he does, right? And they do, and Job never loses faith. That's what the story about. Don't lose faith. The rest is just, advertising. So, okay, here it is, 1 hour. Oh, almost time to leave. 1 hour, 7 minutes, and 20 seconds. And so you stay well, you be good, and I'll talk to you tomorrow morning. Is there anything? Let's see, what have you guys said? The neighbor's little dog is out barking. He's kind of obnoxious. I'm a dog boy, not a big fan of little dogs. If I hang with them and we click, it's okay. Little dogs have so many issues. Because no one understands little dogs, Every dog, the only way a dog can be happy is if they do their job. And why do they call little dogs rat dogs? Because that's their job. They're small enough to go crawl in little holes after rats. No one lets them do it, so they get neurotic. And they look at their owners as big rats. Alex is upstairs. That's the neighbor of the little rat dog. Hey boys. Oh, that's good. Is that you, Alex? Yeah, he's up here somewhere. He's up here somewhere. Well, I wouldn't use it at night. That's never a good idea. Well, I'm going to bed. Sweet dreams. See you in the morning.
Okay, let's see. I'll read the last few things. Oh, it's 1 hour. I think 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 11 seconds. Let's see. Yep. Oh, it did. When Inga and George had it, this place was, I think half this county lost its virginity up here. I hope everyone's doing good. Buddy, are you okay? Martin looks good. PCO. The disco. Well, everyone looks good. Well, Jamie, stay well, and I will see you guys in the morning. Okay. No, we went past 11, 1, 1, 1. Okay. There is 31. I love you guys. Catch you later.